Hello and welcome to the Anime Explorations podcast. My name is Alex.
And I'm Tora.
I'm David.
And this month we are taking a look at My Dress Up Darling. And also we're going to be talking a bit about the a couple of the main anime award things that were going on that had happened, which My Darling and a few that many other shows were nominated for, both the Crunchyroll Anime Awards and the r/anime awards as well. So might as well jump right into it. Before going into this, had you watched the anime or the manga or heard anything about it beforehand?
I had not seen it or read it, but I did know about it, mainly because of cosplay and people cosplaying the characters. And then, seeing, the pictures online of this, Marin from My Dress Up Darling. I'm like, okay, and there's a lot of different costumes, so I guess it's a cosplay show. It's kind of all I knew going in.
Yeah, I'd seen Marin pop up on TikTok a few times. Other than that, no previous exposure.
Yes. So this is in a way, in a similar sort of vibe, not in a chill sense, but in terms of subject matter sense, as something like Eizouken, in that it's a show about making things, about creative arts. Eizouken, it's about anime and animation. Here, it's a show about cosplay. Brief description of the premise. The main character, our unperspective character, is Wakana Gojo. He lives with his grandfather and who makes traditional Japanese Hina dolls. And if you watched the show we watched last month, Emiya Family, you got to see some of those there. And when he was a young kid, he brought one of his friends from school home, and she was not happy with his hobby. And so he got major anxiety from that, but he's still pursuing it, and he ends up meeting into Marin Kitagara, I guess he's a part of the Gyaru Gal subculture, and who wants to cosplay, but is bad at making the costumes. And so their two skills combined to allow them to do cosplay. Her enthusiasm for the characters and helping pick subject matter, and Gojo's aptitude for sewing. Also, it helps the fact that she is an attractive young lady, and he's kind of into her.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, guys, be aware that this is like an ecchi romantic comedy. I will say it's not as bad as some others that I've seen.
Yeah, but as late 30s adult male, I can say this made me very uncomfortable with, watching this high school girl, dressing in very, I don't want to say inappropriate, but very revealing outfits. Like, the first character she's cosplaying is out of a porn game. And yeah, I don't know how many times I told the television, just put clothes on the teenage girl, please.
So I want to say that I really enjoyed this show. That being said, watching it as a woman, you do feel kind of slapped in the face at times with the thought that this was not made for me, unless you're really into young girls, in which case, fine. But I mean, for me, it was very much, I'm having a great time. I'm vibing with the show. I'm enjoying the characters' enthusiasm. And then it's like, oh, yeah, I bet a lot of pervs like this show,
Yeah, going into the minutia of, making costumes, which, takes us back to our cosplay days.
Oh my god, right?
It's like, yes, the community's great. They're so supportive. Although in my personal experience, not the steampunk crowd. They were just, that's neither here nor there. But it's good, people working together, collaborations. And then you wear something that makes Lilu from Fifth Element look conservative. And it's like, oh. So there was a lot of bits that just killed my enjoyment.
And again, I really liked it. I just after I watched it, I had to literally make a pros and cons list. Right? There's so much I like about this show, and then there's so many things that I disagree with. So I don't know. I think if you can just if you can see it as an ode to cosplaying, it's great. Even though there are a few things that are problematic, such as Marin darkening her skin for a cosplay, and the discussion of whether certain body types are correct for certain cosplays, which is like, eesh. But yeah, if you were into cosplay hobby when it was kind of first getting going, or if you're into cosplay now, you will vibe with the characters. And I've known a lot of cosplayers who have this exact dynamic with their costume maker, actually. Like, these people it's like, I kind of know these people. And then when I was watching it, I was also thinking, oh god, I have been both of these people. I have been the nerdy outsider with the weird hobby, and I have also been the extremely enthusiastic person who drags an outsider into my weird hobby. So I got it. I got that. And at the end of the day, I had fun watching it. But yeah, there were a few things that I would have changed if it were made for me, which obviously I don't think it was, but that's fine.
Probably one of the other cosplay things, aside from the darkening the skin and discussion of body types, that I did remember seeing coming up in discussion from Western cosplay circles. Though this is something it's not an issue for the characters who are Japanese, but is definitely an issue for American cosplayers, or European for that matter. And they're talking about using cosplay tape to adjust eye shape.
Right.
Yeah.
And like the general discussion from that was like, basically, don't. With the side bit of like, maybe in like, if you're doing a cosplay photo session, making your eyes bigger, okay, fine. Like, larger eyes, that's one thing, but nothing more than that. If you're doing a character if you're cosplaying as a character who has larger, like the exaggerated round eye, like doing it for like a limited time photo session, but nothing more than that. But yeah, like, so
yeah, it's tricky.
so you mentioned that you've done cosplay.
Yeah.
Were for the craft side of things, because they spend a significant amount of time on the show that like while there is like a significant amount of fan service, like I would almost say like the split is like fan service to time spent making and talking about making costume is about 45 to 55%, maybe 40 to 60.
Yeah, like there is definite fan service, but it is something that, isn't taking up that much time. It's just,
and it is situational rather than pervasive, like it is in some shows.
Like, I will say that about it is that because our viewpoint character Gojo is that teenage boy, it is all from like that viewpoint of a teenage boy. So
I will also give them props for using realistic physics. And I will also give them props because sometimes the fan service just gets so ridiculous that it kind of circles back around to being inoffensive somehow. You're just laughing at the characters at that point.
But yes, honestly, I love the material, the literal materials going into the things, and they're examining them. Because it took me back, to being in Joanne's and just two bolts of fabric and lifting them and dropping them to see which had the right swoosh for the cape I was making.
Yeah, and sewing is hard. The fact that Marin just like straight up assaults Gojo, like, you have to make me costumes, that is true to life. I have been that person.
Yes, you have. Yes,
you know how to sew. Do this, and this, and this, and this.
Yes.
Yeah. Because it's hard, and nowadays it's easy to go online and find people who make their own costumes and then wear them. But I would say that when I was doing cosplay, back in the 2000s and 2010s, it was more common for people to have their costumes made by a friend or a parent or an aunt or someone who knew how to sew.
And then usually went with them to be their photographer.
Yeah.
Which is basically the scenario sort of that we have here with Gojo.
Yeah, exactly.
And Marin.
It's like it felt very familiar.
It felt familiar, yes.
And I appreciate the way they handle the humor with Gojo, and in terms of with his focus on the craft of costuming and that sort of thing, where we have the it's not the actual meet cute. Well, I guess the secondary meet cute in the first episode in the costume room, or in the sewing room, where on the what initially Gojo is like, oh my god, pretty girl, especially if he had so little social contact with almost anyone. And then he sees the and then when Marin shows him the costume, and his brain immediately shifts gears to, oh dear God, what is that? That's terrible.
What stitches did you even use on this? No, that's completely wrong. Wait, you're making this? No, you see, there's an underlayer here. You don't have that.
This is also 100% accurate. So I went to art school, right? And the first thing people would sometimes ask me when I said, oh yeah, I went to art school is, oh, so you had to draw a bunch of naked people. How was that? The thing is, when you're making art, it engages a different part of your brain. It seriously does. So the way his brain switches immediately from teenage boy fluster to focusing in on the craft, that actually happens.
Yeah.
And so that was very familiar and accurate to me.
I also appreciated the some of the scenes of I think the second or third episode where they'd gone out for dinner or lunch after their shopping excursion, and they're walking past the people waiting in line for the restaurant, and the sort of freaking the Danes moment they have there.
That was very cute.
Yes, that was.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really cute moments in this show. I enjoyed the relationship aspect, particularly once we started getting more stuff from Marin's point of view. Once it became obvious that she is into him as well and doesn't know how to show it either. And they're just the two teenagers who have no idea how to communicate with one another. Very true to life.
Use your words, people. Use your words.
Use your words, guys. So I liked that, they just genuinely vibed with one another and were hanging out a lot outside of cosplay eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Also, interested in the when I was rewatching, I think this is the third time I've watched this. I watched this once on my own, once with some other people, and then for the show. And this time, going and going, oh, I kind of figure out what shows they're kind of parodying is the wrong term, but doing the off-brand version of. The second show they do to the Magical Girl show is basically it's part Madoka Magica, but also with a whole bunch of Pretty Cure in there. Because they're doing a Magical Girl fight, but they're all punching, and that, which is how Pretty Cure is. Because
those send-ups were fantastic. You could tell that the creators of the show had a fun time doing those.
Okay, what's the minimum amount of changes we can make so that we're not sued? But it's very clear where our, intent is.
Yeah, it's like
6 differences. We can do that.
Yeah, like the second costume, which is basically a darker skin tone on Marin, as mentioned, and swimsuit. It's like Elena from Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, but with fangs like the main character from I forget the name of the show, but it's the prison one with the prison death battle one. I don't remember the name of it. And then also it has a Guilty Gear presentation with like the typeface on the music, as opposed to the general Street Fighter vibe and relevant typeface.
Yeah, and like David said, I was seeing Lilu from Fifth Element too. Like
It's a strap across the breasts and like bikini bottoms.
And this takes me back around.
And luckily there was very little done with this, because like the guy made it and he was like super uncomfortable. We didn't like ever really, there was like one bit with her in it and then just moved on. And I was thankful for that.
Yep.
There was one scene that made me really uncomfortable, and that is actually like Marin's kind of triumphant scene where she's cosplaying for the first time as the character from the porn game. And she starts getting a lot of attention. And like one of the first guys that comes up to her and asks to take a picture is, you know, kind of that stereotype of the kind of larger bodied sweaty otaku with glasses and a big camera. And it's like, okay, I don't really agree with the use of the stereotype, but at the same time, she starts getting a lot of attention from men and she's having a fantastic time. And that's what made me uncomfortable. It's like she doesn't realize why she's getting all this attention from men necessarily, and that made me uncomfortable as a viewer, because it's like I know how many creeps there are out there. And I've been in that place where I wanted to cosplay a sexy character myself, and I really had to stop and think about it, like, did I want that kind of attention? Because you get it, and if you can enjoy it, that's great for you. But if you know what's going on behind the scenes, then it should make you uncomfortable. And so I'm like, oh, child, how old are you? Where are your parents? This is terrible. Like,
yeah.
And it's supposed to be this great triumphant moment for her, and I wanted her to enjoy it. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, God, be careful.
Because the situation in question, it's not like it is a cosplay photo shoot event, but it's not like necessarily the relatively closed event that you'd have at, say, an American anime convention or something like that, where you have a ticketing set up and you have security staff where essentially if somebody's being a creepazoid, they can be like, the security staff can escort them from the building and otherwise kick them out if they're violating rules.
Yeah, like as bad as that was, it's like I've seen that person at conventions. I've had to, dramatically use my cape to block someone from, from that person.
And I almost get upset because I want to be in that moment with the character where they're just having a great time because they're involving themselves in something that they love. But as a woman who has, grown up going to conventions, grown up in fan spaces, you can't ever really relax and just let yourself enjoy it, because people like that exist. There's a big negative underbelly to these fandoms and a lot of bad actors out there. And so you want to be in that moment, and at the same time, your instincts are telling you this is not okay. Like, run away, girl. And I think that is more of an experience for women cosplayers than for men.
Yeah.
So I guess it's appropriate to say I was kind of triggered by that scene.
Like that's reasonable. Like I have encountered fandom related comics from male authors that have definitely had much more awareness of that. I remember reading Genshiken. I think this came up in the anime as well, where like they do a cosplay event at their college, or the Genshiken's contribution to their culture fest or whatever, club day, and like the Genshiken has to eject somebody from the event for being for being inappropriate and taking inappropriate photos. Like I believe they had that person in question like getting clobbered and their camera taken and also broken. It is like lightly played for laughs there, which is still in the set, but not in the sense of that the person is being creepy, but more in the sense of the person who is being creepy like, getting the crap beat out of him, sort of situation. The retribution, not the act, is the act of comedy.
It is definitely good. There are a lot of good people in any given fandom who will defend women who are cosplaying sexy characters, which is great.
Yeah.
I don't have a kind of societalized sexy body, quote unquote, but the few times I have cosplayed are kind of the few times I have gotten like literally leered at. Nobody has ever said anything inappropriate to me because I've always gone with friends. I've always been very conscious of this possibility. But yeah, some of the looks can be uncomfortable. And so when you have a character like Marin, who is conventionally very attractive, and then you factor in the fact that she's like 15, 16, that just kicks in all my mom instincts. And I'm like, oh, baby, where's your friend group to circle around you protectively if something happens? So, I mean, that is just personal to me.
And yeah.
But I think probably other people have had that experience as well.
And she does get, as the season progresses, she does, start working with other people. Other, to do group cosplays. There is definitely that growing support network. So that hopefully next time
I do want to talk about Shinju. Because I loved that character. Character who loved cosplay, but was kind of too shy to do it herself, partially because the character she wanted to cosplay was male, right? But Gojo was able to help her kind of overcome her initial shyness, and they research ways to make her body more masculine so that she can cosplay as this male character. And I vibed with Shinju 100% because, as any lady with big boobs will tell you, they suck. Okay, guys, I am sorry if you like them, but having them absolutely sucks. You heard it from me. And so this show actually addresses the fact that big boobs are hard to deal with, and I really appreciate that. And it also talks about how it's really hard to be mature looking at a young age, right? And this goes back to kind of that, you have to be aware that there are bad guys out there. And so I just really appreciated that this character even existed, let alone that they were talking about, gender shouldn't matter when you are cosplaying your favorite characters.
And I also appreciate that Shinju, while she has a large bust, she's also the youngest character in the show, and
she is a middle schooler.
And they don't leer at her, and we don't have the same male gaze with her that we have with any of the other female characters in the show who are high schooler, either the same age as Gojo, or in the case of Shinju's young older sister,
Shinju's older sister, who does look like a middle schooler. So
yeah, but like the joke bit they do, the most joke bit they do with Shinju is with related to her bust is when it is difficulties with trying to do chest binding, and and in that case it's the joke is buttons break and end up flying out with possibly lethal force.
I'm sorry,
that's
but that is 100% accurate.
Yeah.
Do you know how hard it is to buy button-up shirts when... No, I'm sorry. I'll stop.
Yes, I've gotten hit by a bursting button. I do know.
Sorry, but that is true. just saw an ad on TikTok that came to me because the algorithm knows me so well for button-up shirts in large sizes with extra clasps around the bust area. And it's like, at least people know this is necessary now. Yes, loved that character.
Yeah.
I do feel like for all that they talked about how gender should have nothing to do with cosplaying what you love, which I agree with, great message. I do feel like all of the love that they lavish on cosplaying is a little bit undermined by the fan service that the show utilizes. Because I actually really like Marin as a character, but she does fit right into that manic pixie dream girl trope. And it's like, what are her flaws? Does she have any? I don't know. Her family life isn't great, but that doesn't come up much. And I don't know. I'm like, what?
I mean,
Your dad lets you live alone and model and buy hentai games and post sexy pictures of yourself online. Like, oh, young lady, you're gonna grow up learning all the wrong things.
Yeah, I got the
her first copy was from a porn game. She's learned all the wrong things.
Like my main, like when I was watching this for the third time, I was like, okay, what are, like, on the one hand, like, her flaws are relatively minor. She can't cook worth a darn, which admittedly, because she is living on her own, is a problem. And
like she eats crap, but she stays so thin. How? I'm jealous.
That is a teenage biology.
That is a teenage.
Some
thing.
people, yeah, like, oh, I miss my teenage biology, being able to eat whatever and not waking up sore.
I never had that metabolism, so curse you.
Yes. And
yeah,
curse your brothers, I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's her main flaw. Like I will say, like, I do get the impression, like, if Marin hadn't met Gojo, presumably, like, she would have probably still kept trying to do this. She wouldn't have been as successful at doing cosplay. It would have taken her longer to get to where she was at, where she was able to get over the course of this season. Because basically she had the benefit of managing to get a hold of somebody who had been learning how to sew since he was 10, more or less. To sew clothing since he was 10. The equivalent of the martial arts anime prodigy character, except sewing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I may, cosplay does seem a lot more kind of gate kept these days. Not because you can't do it, but because so many people have now made it almost a professional job that if you go in with your homemade costume, you might have a few moments where, you know, someone recognizes the character and you feel great and you vibe and everything is fantastic, but you're probably going to have a lot more moments where you're looking at other people's costumes and thinking, oh my God, theirs is so much better. Like, I could never make that prop. I could never sew that well. And so I feel like the hobby has kind of lost something in terms of just being about pure enthusiasm. And Marin is enthusiastic. Like, she probably would have continued to do her best, you know, and she would have been happy. But the show also kind of reinforces this idea that if you can't afford like a nice photo shoot with your cosplay, if you can't find someone who can sew really well for you, if you don't, you know, get the right props, that you're not doing it right. And that just takes away from the whole basis of where it came from, which was out of love for fandoms. Right?
Yeah, I definitely, like, I haven't delved that much in the cosplay programming track at, like, KimuraCon necessarily. So I don't know how much of the, like, where they're at, let's say, for tutorializing and helping to onboard people for that sort of thing. I have definitely seen, like, a really good mix of general varieties of character cosplay types at KimuraCon the years I've been going. And it helps that we've gotten some shows which are easier to do cosplay for, like, not easier is the wrong term, but have simpler cosplay designs than others. Like, to use an example, Miraculous Ladybug is a bodysuit with red spots on it. It's a very popular show, and thus lots of people want to dress up as Miraculous Ladybug. The same sort of thing, or a couple guys, or when I went to Kumo last year, there was a couple guys who were dressed up as characters from Gantz. And again, that's a skin tight bodysuit costume, and one with less detail on it necessarily than, say, a plug suit from Evangelion. So, but it helps that anime and animation are doing a decent job of creating these gateway characters so that you can, say, work your way up to a Genshin Impact character or your magical girls or that sort of thing.
I think one of my favorite from when we were doing cosplay was back in the early aughts. We got actually a pretty decently sized group together for the Thor.
It was like 6-7 people.
Yeah, and one of our friends did not have time to make a costume, but he was like, I'm going to be there. It's like 15 minutes from where I live. I want to be a part. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you have time for? Because he was working so much. And he had decided he was going to go because this was when Thor was on Earth in Broxton, Oklahoma. There was a recurring character who was the fry cook at the low school place. So... And he actually was a pretty decent character, Bill the Fry Cook. So it was
just an apron and a spatula.
And a backwards baseball cap.
And that was enough. Like
because that was the character. So, we had Thor, we had Lady Loki, Valkyrie, Helda, I think, was the ice lady who has not shown up again in the comics since.
Right.
And there was Bill. And I'm forgetting a couple of people, but
it was great though.
It was great, and when his character came on stage with the rest of the group, he got a huge applause and laugh.
Yeah.
So honestly, like, I love cosplay, but you don't have to start with the really complicated stuff. If you're going into cosplay, start with something a little simpler and work your way up. Get experience. No one starts being great at anything. Being bad at something is the first step to being kind of good at it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I used example of the show that kicked off of anime cosplay, both in Japan, or the creator whose works kicked off anime cosplay, who kicked off in Japan and in the United States, who sadly passed away between the recording of our 2 episodes, the late Leiji Matsumoto. It is really easy to do Hoshiro Oyama from Galaxy Express 339, or even for that matter, his counterpart from Harlock, which is, it's a poncho, a floppy hat, maybe some Coke bottle glasses, and if you want to do Mattel, the tough part's the hat and finding the right type of coat. That big wraparound fur coat or fake fur coat. But with the two of them, you have two of the most iconic characters in anime.
Mm-hmm. One of the other things that I want to tell people thinking about getting into cosplay would be that because the hobby should be based on enthusiasm, and usually is for most people, people who are good at cosplay will be happy to tell you how they made things. Like, in almost all cases, they'll tell you exactly where they got their materials, exactly how they put it together. A lot of creators will have blogs or Tumblrs or TikToks where they explain every step of their process for people who want to do it themselves. So if you're getting into cosplay and you're like, oh God, I can't possibly achieve that level, maybe you can. I mean, if you go and look, quite often people will detail out all their process for you so you can attempt it yourself. And like David said, the first step is just getting out there and trying it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be intense or involve heating up foam with a heat gun. Like it could just be some simple props and a cool coat. Like, I mean, yeah, and that's fine.
Oh, God. Yeah, and even if you do make it and you don't like it, there's nothing to stop you from doing it again and again and again. God, my Thor costume went through what, 5 iterations before I was really happy with it?
You have to really love it, because otherwise the time that you spend and the money that you spend, you'll be like, why did I do this? Which is why it's heartening that people are still doing cosplay at an amateur level, because they just love the stuff that they've been watching that much. And when you find other people who love that stuff the same amount as you, that is such a good feeling. I think that's what the whole hobby is based on, really.
Yeah. I need to get started on my Alphonse costume for Halloween. My son and I are going as Edward and Alphonse Elric this Halloween, so
it's gonna be adorable.
Because we're about the right height difference.
It also bears mentioning that if a show is particularly popular, to mention Full Metal Alchemist, there, like the more people who are trying to cosplay, the more resources out there, people who will have asked the same question as you have. There are probably like 20 plus forums that will have had threads or blogs that will have blog posts, for example, on how to do the harness gear for Attack on Titan. If that's your jam.
That's true.
Yeah.
So I think the reason that I come around to liking Marin a lot as a character is because of that enthusiasm. And I've shared that experience, and it makes me want to give her a big hug and be like, yes, go forth, young nerd.
Yeah. And I will say, like, online, yes, as you both have covered, online resources are fantastic. One of probably the best resources if you're trying to get into Star Wars, which, is great. They've got, the 501st and, the Rebel Legion, and they've got huge forums that tell you basically exactly how to make everything. Or if you don't want to make it, if you want to buy pieces, they'll tell you the best places to buy them, the best people to buy them from. For any price point, there's that. And that's the one I kind of know best, but I'm almost certain that there are those groups for every fandom you can imagine.
Thank God for the internet.
I remember.
Yes, thank God for the internet. If without the internet, you wouldn't be listening to us now.
Yeah.
I remember going to one of the local science fiction conventions, Oricon, and they had I forget the name of the group, but they had the local Mandalorian group. This was before the Mandalorian aired, and with plenty of instructions on how to make your Mando armor. And I imagine that they are probably even busier now and with more people.
I'm sure.
Yeah. But one of the great things for cosplay is these days, if you're getting into it, it's 3D printing, because a lot of the things, they're just free files online that you can find. You can figure out your sizes and you can print it, or you can have it printed by someone else for you personally. And that cuts down so much on having to carve at a foam core.
So much.
Or not foam core. I mean, yes, you could do foam core, but craft foam is what I was thinking.
The abuses that have been performed on foam in the name of cosplay are legion.
The amount of foam trash I have left behind in my wake.
Right, just one more quick thing I want to say, if people are thinking about cosplaying, and then we can move on. But keep in mind that the cosplays you're seeing coming out this year and forward from this year, because of the pandemic, creators basically had a year to 2 years to just sit at home and perfect their costumes. So I feel like the quality right now is really kind of artificially high just because of that. So just, keep that in the back of your mind. That is not a reason not to cosplay right now.
When you have a year to stick Genshin Impact in photo mode and move the camera about every single possible angle of your favorite character, yeah.
In my experience, it's more like it is in the show, where it's like, we have 2 weeks.
Oh God! Or
oh God!
Even worse. Okay, The prop went to our old address. We have 3 days to make a new crown out of what we can find, and it's Friday at 6.
Yep. These are things that happen.
God, yeah. Like, we overnighted that to the hotel and spent 3 hours with hot glue and spray paint on the balcony.
Good times.
But that crown looked gorgeous. I had no sleep, but it was gorgeous.
Yeah.
So as we mentioned with the popularity of Marin Kitagawa, this show got nominated for a lot of awards when they did their anime awards season, for both the Crunchyroll Anime Awards and the r/anime awards. Admittedly, it did not win any of them, but admittedly, for some of these categories, I'm not going to say it was set out to die, but when you're nominated for Character I Most Want to Protect at the Crunchyroll Anime Awards, and your opposition is Bocchi from Ranking of Kings. No, Bocchi from Ranking of Kings. Not Bocchi, but Bocchi from Ranking of Kings.
Okay.
And Anya from Spy Family. You're going, like, it's a pleasure, it's an honor just to be nominated.
It was a strong year for comedy, a strong year.
Yeah.
Ranking of Kings was kind of mix of comedy and dramatic action. We should probably do that show at some point. It's a good show, Ranking of Kings. Also a show that got nominated a bunch. So Bocchi The Rock, which is the show that we're going to be doing next, did not get nominated for anything at the Crunchyroll Anime Awards, mainly just because of their cutoff date. They didn't do anything for that fall season for eligibility, because it was by their cutoff time would have been too early in the season for that for those shows. So I understand why they did that, but it swept a lot of points at the R Anime Awards, best comedy. It took the public winner for most comedic character and cast and animation. Other shows did better than those. Like Chainsaw Man was not eligible for the Crunchyroll Anime Awards, which is why it didn't win anything. Others would probably have done better.
We watched Chainsaw Man, and it was really good, but it wasn't really for me. I didn't much care.
It probably would have gotten a few things though if it had been eligible.
It was gorgeously done, but characters didn't really do much for me.
Oh.
And I have read the manga before, so I did know everything that was coming, and I knew they made a lot of changes, a number of changes for pacing wise, and I thought that the changes they made it more of a streamlined show as opposed to the manga. Why are I don't know why, we're talking about the awards and it wasn't there, so
yeah.
Sorry.
That's another podcast.
Well, I mean, it was nominated.
Well,
it was nominated for a bunch at the R Anime Awards. It did take a bunch of them, for one of the episodes for the best ending, which Chainsaw Man having different endings for every episode was worked well.
Yes.
I was delighted to see Edge Runners in the awards.
Edge Runner winning best. Oh,
that show was fantastic.
So I appreciate. So I watched the Crunchyroll Anime Awards ceremony, not live because it aired at 1:30 in the morning.
Ungodly time.
I was going to say, wasn't it at 2 a.m.?
Yeah, it was at 2 a.m. 1:30 because it was being streamed live from Japan, which I appreciated that they did do the awards show in Japan, because because of how they changed the presentation. To back up for those who haven't watched the awards ceremonies in the past, before the pandemic, the awards show was basically like, I would describe it as closer to being like the Keeleys, except without all the trailers, as far as the video game awards, where like you had the audience was primarily video game fans, gamers. You had some people from the studios and stuff come on stage and that sort of thing, but the show was meant for the fans. The presentation of the Crunchyroll Anime Awards this year, I would compare it closer to the Golden Globes in terms of the audience was exclusively people who were like nominees and people from the various companies and that sort of thing.
It was like, industry focused.
Yeah, it was industry focused, but with fan voting, and a jury of critics and fans who helped pick the nominees. And so you had like the round tables with presumably they had food and such beforehand. So like the Golden Globes, they may be a little liquored up, but not like as liquored up as the American Golden Globes get. But this also meant like we got to see reactions from the people who made the shows when they won, as opposed to before the earlier show ceremonies where, oh, Studio Trigger has won for this show. Here's a pre-recorded acceptance speech because we're having this show in Los Angeles and they're actively working on another show right now. So they can't make the time to send somebody to fly out to Los Angeles, do an award show ceremony, and then come back, or what have you. It fits with their schedule to have this ceremony, to come to the ceremony, and so when Cyberpunk Edgerunners won after not winning any other ones, and particularly with having nominees who had been generally sweeping everything before this, like Demon Slayer and Spy Family. Like you got to see like the reactions of everyone at Studio Trigger who were at their table, like, what? We won? We weren't supposed to win. We thought that Demon Slayer was going to win. We thought Attack on Titan was going to win.
Well, like, didn't Edrunners also win Best English Voice Actor?
Yes, it did win Best English Voice Actor for David Martinez.
Yeah.
But as for Zach Aguilar in that role, but also like for the voice actor, for the voice actor awards in general, they gave those out in the pre-show, particularly because they had voice actor awards for every language that Crunchyroll does.
Oh wow!
So English. This is whether or not this is a show that is dubbed that is carried on Crunchyroll. If Crunchyroll does that language, then they give out an award for that, with the exception of Russian, this year. But they had like English, German,
Arabic,
Spanish,
Castilian.
They have a lot.
Yeah.
Portuguese.
So all of them are there. So I understand why they didn't do that. Why they didn't do that.
It would have been too much to air for sure.
Like it was already
with so many of the same character coming up.
Yeah,
voiced by somebody else.
Yeah, like, particularly again, there's a fairly long ceremony as it was, even like not including the pre-show was like a couple hours plus with a couple of musical performances. But yeah. Speaking of shows about people who where your parents, Call of the Night also got a fair amount of award nominations as well. And a few wins in on the r/anime awards. So that is a show about a middle schooler with insomnia wandering around Tokyo after dark and meeting up with a vampire.
Oh my goodness.
And it's a comedy.
Oh, honey, where are your parents?
Like, it's a good show. The opening and closing songs for that show both slap. They are bona fide bangers. But and the show has very strong lo-fi vibes. But yeah, that is definitely Where Are Your Parents, the show.
It's like young adult novels here in the States, where like they're classified as young adult novels, but they contain super serious and dire subject matter if you stop to think about them for a moment. Good times.
Like,
saying this as a fan of YA fiction right here.
Also, just keep in mind, things like The Hunger Games are classified as young adult.
That's what I'm talking about.
I know, it's like, what? Why are you classifying this as young adult? Because it's shorter than another novel? It is not enough.
No, it's because the main characters are teenagers. I saw something on TikTok the other day that I want to share that was obviously just pulled straight from Tumblr. It said the biggest indicator of the kids not being all right is that all isekai nowadays has gone from ultimate power level, super cool beam explosion harem fantasy to shit like, in this new world, I eat lots of delicious food and help people with minor problems, and I feel incredibly fulfilled with a happy and peaceful life where the cold grip of capitalism can't touch me.
Yeah, I mean, we do get those shows, but they are significant. They are like equally balanced, if not outweighed, but as far as the power fantasy shows. Like Eminence and Shadow is basically the Chudibio power fantasy isekai show.
I find that Chainsaw Man was kind of a weird mix between the two.
Yeah, like Chainsaw Man is like, my elevator pitch for it is, what if you crossed Hayate the Combat Butler and Devilman?
Yeah.
Where what if instead of Hayate ending up meeting up with a rich girl and becoming her battle butler, what if instead Hayate ran into not to give too much away for later Chainsaw Man, what if Hayate ran into his childhood friend who revealed to him that there are devils and we need to turn you into a devil man in order to fight to save humanity from these horrible devils, and you swear that this childhood friend is not going to turn evil in the future? Not at all.
That's Devilman.
Yes,
that is just Devilman.
No, the difference being is the main character of Devilman doesn't have crippling debt.
Well, I guess neither does Chainsaw Man after the first episode.
True.
Who do I owe debt to? A bunch of corpses? They're not going to collect. I hope.
My standards are so low at this point in my life.
I don't know if it's that our standards are different. It's just the fact that we've seen so much. It now takes something extra to move out of the, we've seen that before. It takes something to distinguish a work. And Chainsaw Man really didn't for me.
Well, it did for me in that the protagonist is, like, not actually a protagonist.
I know!
His wants are so low that he just kind of goes with everything. And the other characters, like, if they weren't there, the show would be boring.
Yeah, like
with good fights. I mean, as much as I was indifferent towards Chainsaw Man, the fights in that show are absolutely gorgeous.
As far as the low standards thing, that does fit with Hayate, because
I mean, disgusting but gorgeous.
Like, I remember there's a chapter of Hayate where they flash back to Hayate writing his what do I want when I get older paper for class, and it's like, I want a small studio apartment that my parents don't know where it is. Which if you know Hayate the Comic Butler, you understand why, because like Hayate's parents are the worst parents in anime, and that's saying something.
That's saying a lot.
Okay, maybe not the worst parents. Like,
I don't know. Todoroki from My Hero Academia, those are bad parents.
Oh, God.
So, not to turn this into the Hayate the Combat Butler podcast, but
it gets better. But
Hayate's parents are like just total crooks. They have a penchant for fast crimes and slow horses.
Oh, no.
and leaving their young son Hayate from like the age of like 6 or 7 to basically be the one who actually is responsible for making the money for the household, which is why he has such a massive array of skills.
Are you saying this is like if Bonnie and Clyde had a kid?
Kind of like
Not incorrect.
They don't do bank robbery, but they do like art forgery and selling fake goods and that sort of thing. And then they blow all their money on slow horses.
God, slow horses.
And so at the first chapter of the series, the family decided we're going to take out a massive loan from some very generous people, Yakuza. We're going to use our son for collateral. And then they skip town. And it is also later revealed that they'd also stolen his video store card and rented a bunch of tapes and took the tapes with them.
Oh my God.
And so basically Hayate mentioned, like, if he ever see Karen of them, he's going to beat the crap out of his parents when he meets them.
It's that video card bit that really elevates it to petty assholery right there. Wow. Oh man.
So yeah. So, and again, next month's show is going to be Bocchi The Rock, which won a lot of awards at the r/anime award, including the public winner for anime of the year. So I figured this would be a good pick. This is a recommendation from David. You want to talk about the show a bit and why you picked it?
That sounds like a great thing to do next week or next time.
He's saying that he will go off for another 20 minutes.
Oh, I will say, I just saw like one frame from this show of the character performing on stage in a cardboard box because she's has such, anxiety about performing in public. And I'm like, I've got to check this out. And I loved this show. Honestly, it hooked me immediately. It resonated with me being that like socially awkward introvert in school, and then just finding something you're passionate about.
Finding your
and
people.
Just channeling it. Yeah, finding your people.
Yeah.
Like, I love that kind of thing. And I hope there's more. I cannot wait to watch more. This is going to be my third time watching it, and it's pretty new. I've seen it twice already.
I'm excited to watch it for the first time.
Yeah.
All right. And for those who are watching along with the show, Bocchi The Rock is available for streaming on Crunchyroll. It is new enough that we do not have a physical release for it yet. There may be a manga. If there is, I'll put a link to where you can get it in the show notes. Also, I forgot to do this last time, so I might as well fix that here. If you do want to comment on the show, we have an email address, animeexplorations@gmail.com. If you get your email in time, we will comments on Bocchi The Rock, or for that matter, your comments on My Dress Up Darling, we will happily bring those up on the next show.
My Dress Up Darling also available on Crunchyroll.
Yep. And My Dress Up Darling manga is licensed for that and is available as well. I'll have links for that too.
Yeah, send us stuff to interact with. We will be delighted to interact with you. It's fun to talk about this stuff with people, I think.
Yeah.
Yep. So, till next time, thank you very much for listening. Make sure to rate and review on your podcatching platform of choice. It helps us get viewed. And if you're watching or listening to the audio only embed on YouTube, like, subscribe, ring the bell, so forth and so on. Yada, yada.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Have a good one. See you next month.